Hi guys, this is Melissa. We'll be getting ready to start at 4 p.m. It's in about another 23 minutes or so. And we're going to be doing the magic hour with Jim Landers of Landers Photography School here in San Antonio. And he's just going to give you some great tips to really capture those moments during that first light and last light of the day when the best pictures are possible. So we hope you'll tune in about 23 minutes or so, and we'll have this going. And if you're watching this on the playback, in the end, you can go ahead in the description. I'm sorry, you can jump ahead with the start time on there. There should be a timestamp, and you can start up there. So we'll get ready in a little bit. So we'll see you at 4 o'clock in about 23 minutes or so, and hope you have some great questions for Jim. Hey, James.
Hey,
Just waiting on Jim, and we're already started. We're live on YouTube, and we're posted on our Facebook page for the YouTube. And let me just, are we set up with the Zoom link? Yep, already on our page. So looks great. And I have our, for those people who are joining us on YouTube, the chat boxes, the live chat's open, so you can put any of your questions in there, and I will ask Jim as well. And again, if you're watching this on the playback, just go on the description and I'll have the timestamp to go ahead and uh, have this at the start of Jim's presentation. And click on the participants here. And I know I've put a reminder out today that we have our 30% off our fine art papers going on till July 4th. So hopefully everybody on their unbox will go ahead and show us some of their orders. We'd like to see what you guys did, if y'all tried new media, new paper media, or if y'all went bigger. Sometimes that's the best time is during these sales is to see how big you want to go on some awesome new media.
how do I turn off the virtual background? I don't know why that's on.
Um, Go under where your video
Oh,
camera
here we
is.
go. Yeah, I have it selected none, but it's adding it anyway. Oh, no, I didn't have it as none. Okay, I thought I did. All right.
How is my volume, background volume here? Just because there's family here doing a party. It's my granddad's 100th birthday, so
No,
family coming in today.
yeah, no, I don't hear any background noise.
Good, yeah. I'm kind of I think I've styrofoamed the door pretty well. Trisha joining us there in the waiting room for Zoom. I'm gonna wait for Jim to go get in um before I start letting everybody in. Oh, and I did send you an email with some kind of our first Tuesday uh, talking points. So if you get a chance to go, I'm going to get ready to send those to the artists. I just want to make sure that there's nothing else you wanted them to address in there. But I mean, I'm
Oh,
excited First Tuesday. I actually have a couple of people who are excited about First Tuesday, which we will be talking about selling prints at your booth. So all these pop-up events are coming back. All the live in-person events are coming back. And so after everybody's taken a year off of doing that, maybe this is a great time refresher to kind of just talk about techniques that people use, how they select which events they're going to do, what kind of quantity of inventory do they have. So all sorts of stuff, pricing that they do with their booths, prints, so packaging. There's so many things that go into selling at a booth. So we have it from two different perspectives, an artist's perspective and a photographer's perspective. So that'll be fun to kind of have on Tuesday. Now I'm just gonna. Okay. Just gonna- Any updates, James, with the new printer?
Now we're trying to get some um, get the settings configured for some of the faster printing options. Um, right now we're printing it at the highest setting, but as far as which produces superb print quality, but we want to be able to print faster while
Mhm.
not losing print quality. So just trying to get that dialed in has been a little difficult, but other than that, it's been uh, Foster's been running it nonstop.
Yeah.
Um,
How are we coming along with the? I know on our on the die bond page, we're talking about the raised lettering coming soon. Is that
yeah, I have to the whole raised lettering thing and really kind of it's gonna we're gonna have the way we're looking at doing is we're gonna have um, several textured options. One is going to be a uh, just kind of we're going to take the image that they supply and we're going to create the appropriate texture map. We're going to have three levels, a kind of a subtle texture, mid-level texture, and then a heavy level texture. And basically it takes a grayscale, it creates it. We take the image, capture a grayscale version of that. And then all the lighter the tones, the higher the relief, whereas the darker the tones, the less, closer to the original surface. And then so there's going to be that option, and then the other option is going to be a and you call this a fourth level, where it's the customer will be able to control. Now, in order to do that, the customer will have to use a program like Photoshop and know how to create layers, and they'll have to save their file as a layer, as a TIFF with layers, and then uh, we'll print their image, the color part, which will consist of one layer. But if they want to isolate or specify where the texture is going to be, then they can do that in the underlying the second layer.
that's going to be really neat. I can't wait till we come out with that feature.
Yeah.
Well, I see we have Jim in, and we're going to get ready to get started. And Let me see. I'm gonna pin Jim up here. Let me stop share here. And Jim, I'm going to get ready to give you control. So if you can pin your thing once you get control. Let me get in here. There it goes. All right, you are now host there, Jim. And you can go ahead and just make sure your video is pinned. So that way on YouTube,
So I'm not seeing everybody. Is that right?
yeah, well, so everybody on YouTube sees you,
Ah,
especially if you share your screen. So if you have examples,
okay.
they can see them really well.
Yeah, all of YouTube sees you. Everyone that's, regardless of what they're watching, they're seeing you.
It now switched over to the photo tips monthly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Science Theater 2000 kind of commentator there. Let's get you there. If you is your screen pinned yet?
Yes.
All right. Well, we're great.
So
James, I'll
before,
let you introduce Jim because you always have a really good introduction for for
yeah,
Jim.
you know, it's for the man that needs no introduction. Yes. Well, before I introduce him, I guess we'll get the administrative stuff out of the way. Just for anyone that's watching on YouTube or on Zoom, up through the 4th of July, we are running I think it's 30% off all our fine art papers. It's a great opportunity to try different papers, especially if you're not certain which one. I mean, we have too many fine art papers to choose from. Literally, just we have close to 20. I think we do have 20. Um, and we're actually looking at adding more. We are increasing our space at the end of September. We're going to have add another extra 3,000 square feet of space to add printers
Wow.
in. So we may add some more paper options as well. But with that said, that 30% off, great opportunity to try different papers, smooth versus textured, the Haniel line versus some of the other the Moab line. For photographers, a lot of people a lot of photographers think, oh, printing on fine art papers. Well, that's I don't know how my photography will look on these photo papers or on these fine art papers. Well, the truth of the matter is these fine art papers were actually engineered with photography in mind originally. So these are fine art papers, but these are fine art photo papers. So if you are a photographer, your photography will come out looking stunning on these papers, and you get the added benefit of being able to select papers that you typically, with textures and features that you typically won't be able to find. So with your traditional darkroom prints or C prints. So that's our special. It goes on till the 4th or at midnight Central Time. So take advantage of that. Now, with all that out of the way, probably spent too much time on that. Let's talk about our host, Jim Landers. I've known Jim since the early 2000s. We were one of the first sponsors of Photo SA, which is a local San Antonio photo meetup club, one of the larger ones in San Antonio, if not the largest. And we've been a sponsor, and I've been a close friend of Jim. Jim runs Landers Photography School, which and he has teaching over the years. He's taught literally thousands of both aspiring and experienced photographers various aspects of photography, from business related courses to how to capture things in motion. So Anyway, without any further introduction needed, here's Jim Landers.
Woo, man. It always makes me feel so good.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine if we had the incredible Jim Landers?
No, I have no ability to imagine that.
Oh,
Thank that's what. Thank you, James, and thank you, Melissa, for all the work that you do to put these events together, so that all creatives can be uplifted by whatever information that they glean from what is being shared. Some information you'll already know, you've already heard before. You may hear it in a totally different way. And then again, you may hear something totally brand new, but it's because you're here that you even have the ability for that to happen. So thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here at Photo Tips Monthly with Finer Works and Landers Photography School. So today I'm bringing you a topic called Magic Hour. And the magic hour is a very specific time of the day. Now, you will hear this called different things. I've heard it called blue hour, and I've heard it called golden hour. Now, blue hour doesn't last an hour. Golden hour doesn't last an hour. So I'm not sure why they think that's the right way to say it. I'm not telling them they're wrong. I'm just thinking it's both. Both things happen in the hour. So why not call it the magic hour? That's how I was introduced to it many, many years ago. And over the years have heard it called a couple of different things. But magic hour seems to be the thing that gets my attention the most and seems to describe it the best. But it's the first or last hour of light during the day. So first thing in the morning and then last thing in the evening. First hour or last hour of light during the day. Now, I just posted the handout. For those of you who are watching here on Zoom, there's a handout that should be in your chat. If you're on an Apple product, maybe not. If you're on mobile, maybe not. But if you're on a desktop, especially PCs, you have access to the handout that I just gave you, just put there. And if anyone else comes in while, okay, well, I see Melissa saying I got that.
Yeah, and we actually do have that on our, the link is on my Google Docs so that it can be shared, and it is on our YouTube chat. So if you're watching on YouTube as well, just go to the live chat. The link is there to see the document as well.
Yeah, see, now you guys know why I think Melissa rocks. I don't even have to say anything and boom, she's already done it. Thank you, Melissa. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to, for those of you who don't have it, that's fine too, because I'm going to share it with you. This is my screen. I'm going to make it just a bit larger for just in case. Let's see, view, zoom, 200%. Oh, yeah. There we go. And why is it grayed out? What did I do?
Are you selecting it maybe? Just kind of click off of it.
Oh, well, I have no idea why it's grayed out. I must have done something. It's always me, but it doesn't matter because that image. So that image is actually supposed to be in shadow. That's it's not supposed to be highlighted or bright like that. But you get the idea. So again, when is and what is the magic hour? Put simply, the first and last hours of the day. Although sunsets and sunrises occur every day, there are a few things so common that are also so unique. As the earth moves and the clouds move, a sunset continues to change from one moment to the next. We watch the bright colors of red, yellow, blue, purple, pink, orange, and gold turn to deep, dark blues. This is at night, of course. No matter where you are in the world, this is always a special moment during the day. So I've got some tips on planning and some tips on planning. Okay, so I'm sure you've created wonderful images without any planning. But if you take a moment and look around at your environment, you're going to find beautiful and interesting places that make for good foregrounds. Remember, sunrises and sunsets don't last long. no more than about half an hour. So make sure you're in the location that you want to be so that you can see the sun going all the way down or coming up. Make sure there's not something distracting you don't want to have in your photograph in that foreground, a building. Maybe the building is what you want in the foreground. So make sure that you're consciously making that choice. Easier to do when the sun's going down than when it's coming up, because you kind of have to do it the night before or the day before to kind of get an idea of where it's going to be. And we'll talk about being able to plan for that kind of thing even better, because there's software to help you out. But we'll come to that in a moment. I want you to look for images that could include silhouettes. That'd be kind of fun. So number one, there's 6. Find a beautiful and interesting place that will make for a great foreground, or a place that will not have anything in the foreground. Number 2, choose a location where you'll be able to see the sun go all the way down, or the reverse if you're doing sunrise, where it's going to come up. Number 3, look for opportunities to include silhouettes. Number 4, be there early. I'm going to recommend at least half an hour, but it depends on the location. Be there early. Number 5, you'd think this would be one that I wouldn't have to add to the list. Bring your camera and your tripod. I think your camera you got, but your tripod, you might not have thought about that one. You need your tripod too. So, and also clean your lens with the ultra microfiber cloth. Clean that lens and make sure you're not using that microfiber cloth for anything other than the glass on your lens. I guess you could use it for your eye, but the problem with the eye is if you are wearing makeup, and some people do, I don't, but some people do, you don't want that makeup transferred to your microfiber cloth. So make sure that that just doesn't happen. You don't want that transferring to your lens. Now, there's that little asterisk there that says be there at least half an hour before. That means I have a little bit more to say about that subject. Find out the times the sun rises and sets. A local newspaper, a weather station will have that information. But for the rest of us, do you know that Google Calendar, you can add that kind of thing to it? Kind of cool. And of course, yes, there's an app for that. There's an app for pretty much everything. There are several of them. One's called Golden Hour, and you can go to their website, golden-hour.com. There's the photographer's ephemeral. There is, oh man, there was the main one that I wanted to, oh, it's gone. Maybe I'll think of it as we're going along. But just enter a search category, sunset app or sunrise app, and you'll see them there. You'll see several of them, and a lot of them are free. Now let's talk about the equipment. Lenses. I think you should choose lenses of different focal lengths. I don't think there is one right lens for this kind of thing. I think there's a lot of, it's just like tools in the toolbox in your garage. The tools have different purposes, but we use a combination of tools in order to get what we want. This is the same. For a wide angle lens, maybe you're wanting to create this massive sweeping landscape that includes a whole lot of stuff, but the sun's going to be itty bitty tiny in it. Is that what you want? Then perfect. If you want the sun to be a little bit bigger, maybe we're needing a telephoto lens to zoom in just a little bit. This makes the sun look much larger, especially when you're using 200 millimeters, 300 millimeters, 400, 500, 600 millimeters. Of course, we're going up into pretty expensive territory once we pass 300 millimeters. For those of you that have those, oh, thank you, Robin. I'd like to have it in there. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thank you. My wife just brought me a cherry limeade slush. She's pretty cool. When you're talking about a 300, 400, above 300, so 400 millimeter, 500 millimeter, those of you who had those kind of lenses, you know that you invested quite a bit into them. A special note, of course, we don't want to look directly into the sun through our lens. But try and it's not a strawberry daiquiri. It's a cherry limeade slush from Sonic. Thank you, Robin. So Obviously, it's not a good idea to look through the lens when you're looking directly into the sun. Now, lots of different lenses, lots of different purposes, lots of different reasons to choose those. And I might spend a little bit more time with those throughout this lesson today. But I want to move on to the things that go in front of the lens. Filters. With the advent of digital cameras and Photoshop. Now, Photoshop's been around a little while. You guys probably know this, but it's been around since, I think people know it's been around more than 20 years. Some people know it's been around more than 30 years. I don't know that everybody knows it's been around since 1987. It's been around a while. And ever since we've had this cool tool that we can manipulate images with, we actually have needed fewer and fewer filters. And we're down to about 3. There's only about 3 that you really need anymore. You could arguably say there's a couple more, but for the most part, there's 3. So let's talk about those 3. A filter can cause some reflections that will not enhance the look of your images. In many cases, it may be best to take off all filters. And for those of you that use a UV filter, maybe that too. Not always, sometimes. But let's talk about what these filters are real quick. UV filter, I'm sure you know, stands for ultraviolet. Ultraviolet. It doesn't, it's not always by that name. Sometimes you see skylight, 1A, and there's a couple other different ones that the UV filter goes by, but it is just a UV reduction. And you may, if you're thinking logically about this, you may say, well, we can't see UV light. Why would we need a filter to get rid of UV light when we can't see it? I mean, you know why you use it for your eyes, so you don't have UV light entering your eyes, or you're reducing that. So it's just a health thing. But what about your camera? Does UV light negatively affect your camera? No, that's not really the reason why you use it. The reason is because if you've got humidity, and a lot of environments have humidity, then as you're going to farther and farther distances, you're actually compacting all that humidity into a smaller space. It's the reason why if you're driving and you see up ahead that the fog looks like it's getting thicker, and then you get to that fog and it's just the same fog that you were already in, it's because it looks thicker as you're looking into it, because it's compacted. When you create a photograph, you're taking something 3-dimensional and you're flattening into a 2-dimensional space. Now, when we're talking about the UV side of things, though, this is a combination of the humidity and the effect of UV on humidity, which gives it a kind of a blue-gray tint. And it's already got the gray because of the humidity, but that blue tint is from UV. And so when you have a UV filter on your lens, it reduces that. It makes it a little bit more clear. But if you were to just hold up, just looking outside with your UV filter and holding just that in your hand and look through it, it doesn't look like it does a darn thing. It just looks like glass. That's it's because it only works in those certain situations where you've got that humidity and UV light affecting it and adding a little bit more thickness to it. So you're reducing that. Now, the next one I have to talk about is the polarizing filter. Man, what a cool tool. A polarizing filter enhances or reduces reflection, but it also has a side effect of contrast. You want your sky to be a bit bluer, a bit more deep saturated blue, that beautiful blue color we like our skies to be. UV filter can help you with that. It can make clouds a little bit more dramatic. So definitely a cool tool. And one of these tools where if you've got the screw mount kind where it screws onto your lens, it's got 2 rings. The inner ring does lock onto the lens itself. That outer ring keeps on turning. And that's so that you'll notice it as you turn it, it changes. If you have polarized sunglasses, you may have noticed this. Tilt your head to one side. Tilt your head to the other side. You'll notice it gets darker and lighter. That's how you know you've got polarizing lenses. Or when you got them at Walgreens, it said polarized filter on them. You'd know that way too. The next one is graduated neutral density filter. Now there's neutral density filters and graduated neutral density filters. The difference is one takes up the entire space, the other takes up half the space. And it's clear on the other half. There's nothing there. And that way you can turn it around either way and get a scene that is partially too bright and partially just right. Get it with less light, because a neutral density filter is kind of like sunglasses, not polarized sunglasses, but sunglasses. The reason why you have sunglasses is to reduce the amount of light on your eye, so it's not quite so bright. Same thing is going on here. When you have situations where it's just too bright, you can use a neutral density filter to help with that. This darkens the sky and allows, now this is for a neutral graduated, this will darken the sky and allow the camera to get enough light in the foreground. Let's say you're photographing a hill, a mountain, and the sun's going down behind it. That hill will look like it'll go dark. It'll be a silhouette. But what if you don't want that? What if you want some detail on it? A graduated neutral density filter is the way to go. You can get some detail in that foreground, even when the sun is totally behind it, because you'll be blocking it. Now, if there are things that go up into it, tall buildings, we have a little bit of a difficulty there, because your filter won't show that. And you could do something where you expose one image correctly for the foreground, expose another image correctly for the background, and merge those two in post in some image manipulation program. So that's an option as well. I like to do as much as I can in camera. I bet you do too. Those are the filters. By the way, if you've got questions about the lenses that we've talked about so far, or the filters, or anything we talk about, continue to talk about, please feel free to put that in the chat, either on Zoom or on YouTube. So feel free to do that. And Melissa will cut in and let me know. So that's it for filters. Now let's talk about getting the right exposure. I mean, everything can be perfect, but if the exposure is wrong, we got a problem. If focus is wrong, we've got a problem. But let's focus on just one thing at a time, getting the correct exposure. This is the number one reason why photographs don't come out the way you saw them, is because the exposure is not exactly the way you need for it to be in order for it to be what you wanted it to look like, or what it actually does look like. Those brilliant colors during a sunrise and sunset often look amazing to our eyes. But how often have you seen it look washed out in your photographs? Yeah, well, we don't want that. So how do you fix it? Metering. We're going to talk about that. Exposure modes. If you let your camera make the decisions on your exposure, you're likely to get an image that doesn't capture the beauty of the light. Not at sunset and sunrise. During the middle of the day, you probably will get an image using the camera's metering that does a pretty good job on metering. But now when the sun's going down, you can do much better on your own. Often the image will be overexposed because the sky is still relatively light. One of your goals is to preserve the highlights in the scene. If the highlights are overexposed or blown out, reduce the exposure until you get a good exposure of those highlights. We'll talk about that here in just a moment some more. Underexposing will make the colors look more saturated and defined. Your image is going to be more dramatic and probably more like you see it in your mind's eye. So a lot of times we purposefully underexpose a sunset or a sunrise in order to get those brilliant colors. Now, full auto. For those of you that are used to full auto mode on your camera, a sunset is an ideal time to switch your camera into aperture or shutter priority mode, or even better in this instance, manual mode. And take a variety of different images with these different exposures. And I want you to do what's called bracketing. I want you to purposefully change the exposure so that you have a different look. And you may have very specific reasons to do so. Maybe you want to combine them in post, like I mentioned earlier. And by the way, if you don't know what that means, combining them in post just means you're using Photoshop, Lightroom, you're using some type of image manipulation tool to take the best of both worlds or multiple images and combine those pieces together. Cool tool. Bracketing for rich, vibrant colors, usually a stop or two underexposed. Now, how many clicks is that? it's 3 to 6 clicks. But we have to make sure that it is less light, not more light, because you can be headed in the wrong direction. It's just, if someone just says, get out on the road, that's the secret to success, is get out on the road. But what if you got out on the road and instead of defining what it was you were going to do, let's say you were going to downtown San Antonio, but you didn't define it, and you got out on the road and you went the opposite way on I-10 here in San Antonio, you would wind up eventually in El Paso. Yeah, got to define where you're going before you get out. The next part of bracketing is if you want pastel colors, then maybe exactly what the camera meter is reading might give you that, but it's maybe a good idea at that point to overexpose 1 or 2 stops if you like the pastels, or if that's what you're trying to accomplish in that photograph. Now let's do step-by-step for program modes. For those that prefer program modes, let's go over that real quick, just in case. Switch the mode dial to program by turning it to the P. Number 2, press the exposure compensation button. Usually has a plus minus symbol on it. Check your manual if you don't see it so that you can actually find it. Set the exposure compensation to a negative value to purposefully underexpose the image. Start with -1. It'll go to 0.3, 0.7, and then to 1. And then it'll go higher than that. It'll be 0.1, 0.1, 1.7, and then and it'll be 2. So that's, but you're looking at that minus symbol, and we're going to 1. And then see if you need to go lower, based solely on your opinion on how it looks. You're the artist. You define what it looks good. For many DSLRs, press and hold the button while making these changes. So I'm pressing the plus minus, it's in program mode, I'm pressing plus minus and making my changes. Again, this is only for those who are in program mode, which is not really what I recommend, but it's simple. So we're going to continue to talk about it. Number 3, if it's still too bright, change it to -2. If it's still too dark, you change it. You just move it until you get the image you want. Yeah, it may mean you create different images, multiple images to get what you want. That's fine. It's on a tripod, right? I hope so. Sunsets. Oh, by the way, a note. If you are going to use exposure compensation and you frequently use program modes, make sure to set the exposure compensation back to 0 when you're done, because it doesn't reset itself. Wherever you put it, it stays where you put it. That's only for program mode users. There's 3 different program modes: program, shutter priority, aperture priority. Those are the 3 different program modes. Only one's called program. And program mode just means the camera's in charge of your exposure. That's all that means. Now let's talk about your ISO. You may be tempted, because it's starting to get darker. If it's a sunset image, you may be tempted to raise that ISO. I want you to put that image, that ISO at 100. I know that you've heard this before, that as it gets darker, you should increase that ISO to be able to collect enough light. But you also increase the digital noise, the dots that make up the photograph. You increase their size. They become much more obvious when you go up to these higher numbers. And so if you can, leave it at 100. And I say if you can. That means if you don't have to raise that value, then leave it alone. The only reason you'd have to increase the value is if it had really gotten, it's after you know how the sun goes down, but there's still a lot of light in the sky, but then the light goes down. Guess what happens after that? There's still light in the sky. We just can't see it. We see life, we see the world at 1/24th of a second. So therefore, if you choose a shutter speed that's longer, and assuming you're not photographing some motion that's happening in the foreground, then you can choose a shutter speed that's longer and be able to collect more light. So even just after it's gotten dark for your eyes, if you have a 1-second exposure, a 5-second exposure, you're collecting a huge amount more light than your eyes have the ability to see. It's pretty fascinating to be able to create something you can't see with your own eyes. Let's talk about color balance. I think you should try it first in the auto white balance. However, the color of the light changes. So I think you actually should be using it in daylight mode, the one that looks like the sun. Yes, even after the sun has gone down. If you were trying to adjust the whole time, because as the color is changing, it's going to be a pain. It's going to be a challenge. And so, you know, as the lighting, as the sun is, excuse me, as the earth is moving, you're getting different tones of light that entire time. And if you try to adjust, first of all, if you photograph in RAW, then who cares about the color balance? You're going to deal with that later anyway. But those of you who photograph in JPEG, this is important to you. It just makes it easier to have it on one the entire time and forget about it. And that is the sun setting. So it's right at about 5,000 degrees Kelvin, if you know what Kelvin is. And notice that I said for RAW only. If you shoot RAW, which I recommend, and I recommend RAW if and only if these three things are in place for you. And RAW is the better file type, but if and only if these three things are available to you. One, of course, your camera gives you the option. I'm not sure there's any cameras that don't give you the option, but maybe they exist. Number two, you have software to manipulate the RAW image, because a RAW image isn't usable anywhere. You can't email it to friends. You can't send it to the lab. It's just not a usable tool for anything other than you looking at it. It's something you must manipulate. And then three, you know how to use the software. Not that it's difficult, but if you're in a hurry, you're going to get frustrated. So you've got those three things in place, then I recommend using RAW. And for the most part, that means I always recommend RAW, but not always. There are times when JPEG is the better option. Not in this situation, though. In this situation, we're photographing the sunsets or the sunrises, the magic hour. RAW, by far, is the better choice. You may think, well, then when would be a good choice to use JPEG over RAW? If you're photographing some event, having nothing to do with what we're talking about today, but if you're photographing some event and the event organizer needs those photographs as soon as possible, I mean, immediately, they need to load them up to the website before the event even ends. Okay, then I recommend doing a JPEG. RAW just takes longer, not a whole lot longer, and you get better with it over time, but it still takes longer. A JPEG's ready to go right now, assuming you got the exposure right and the color balance right. A JPEG is ready. So you could burn all those images to a thumb drive or just hand them the card and boom, they're ready to go. No extra work needed. But if you don't have that situation, it's RAW. RAW is the best tool. All right, so enough about ISO, unless you guys have some other questions about it. Let's talk about composition techniques. Horizontal and vertical. Most sunrises and sunsets are created horizontal. Most of the time, that's probably the way you should do it, but turn the camera on its side, give it a new perspective. If you've got a tree, maybe that just makes it where you're framing using a tree or trees, and it just looks better as a vertical. But also think about, how am I going to use this photograph? For instance, I knew ahead of time that someone wanted to have a photograph on their very tall fireplace. So I knew ahead of time it was going to be a vertical. And a horizontal would just not have worked in that space. So if you know what the end result is supposed to be, you can cater the work to it. But most of us don't have that kind of thing ahead of time. We're just creating because we think it's pretty. Oh, this is great. I want this. I want to collect it. I want it to be mine. I want to be able to look at it in the future. And so we don't have something else in mind other than it looks great and I want to look at it again later. in that instance, play. I do recommend that you keep your horizon level. There are times when it looks okay to tilt your camera and the dramatic tilt or something, but for the most part, not for sunrises and sunsets. Now, I want to make sure I'm bringing something up. It's not only the sunrises and sunsets that we're talking about with the magic hour. Those are just something that really catches your attention. But I also want you to turn around and look at the long shadows that the trees are making on the ground because of that sunset behind you. Look in lots of different areas. Turn all the way around to see your environment. Walk around it. You're going to see lots of different cool things to photograph, and they aren't all in the direction of the action. For instance, let's say you're a wedding photographer and you're photographing the first dance. Most photographers are going to do a good job of photographing the first dance. The better photographers are not only going to do that, but they're going to catch the reactions of the people who are watching. They're going to photograph the parents, a sibling. Let's say there's a toast and you're photographing the person who's doing the toast, but the person who is being spoken about, we need to photograph them too. So it's not only the action, but the reaction that you need to be looking for. Next thing is the rule of thirds. It's often idea to place elements like the horizon, the sun, silhouettes off center. I'm not saying you need to do that. I'm not saying it's best in every situation. I'm saying the rule of thirds is a pretty cool tool, and it works a lot of the time. Compose the scene so that the horizon line is not in the center. Placing the horizon line at about a third from the top or a third from the bottom of the frame. So that it is maybe a bit more pleasing to look at. Now, foreground, we mentioned this a little bit earlier. Maybe you find something interesting. Maybe there's a sculpture that catches your attention. Maybe there's a cliff, a tree, a rock, something that is just kind of cool. Maybe it's your own vehicle. This may add something interesting to help tell the story even better. I was here. Maybe it adds some depth to the scene. Could be a structure, a lake, a person, a couple. Keep it simple. We want to avoid anything that doesn't help tell our story. That may mean getting a different angle to make that happen. That may mean putting on a different lens to make that happen. But keep it simple. Now, let's talk about sunsets, just the silhouettes. Silhouettes just a bit longer. If you're going to do a silhouette, you're going to need a point of interest, some context. And one of the best ways to add a sunrise or a sunset is to incorporate a silhouette. This could be trees, structures, hills, mountains, a pier. There's lots of things that you can have as a silhouette. Now, silhouette and foreground, similar, but a silhouette means I'm going to allow it to go dark, and a foreground doesn't necessarily mean I'm allowing it to go dark. And a silhouette doesn't have to be totally solid black. In fact, some of the best silhouettes are going to show just a little bit of detail so you can get a better idea of what that is. Just a bit of detail, not much, just a little. Now let's talk about that tripod. Steady your camera. We don't want any motion blur coming from your camera. There are several ways that it's going to happen. But there's several solutions to it. So, I mean, just hand holding, you run the potential of your hands moving during the exposure, just pressing down that shutter a little bit. So if you've got a tripod, obviously that's the best tool, but there's also things that you may have around you. You may have a table, a rock, a fence post. There's oftentimes things around that you can take advantage of in order to keep your camera totally still. But the best is a tripod. Let's talk about that for a minute. When you go somewhere, you're often taking the lightweight tripod, the travel pod, as many call it. A lot of advantages to a travel pod, but the main reason is weight. Second would be it's smaller. But the advantage is to the heavier tripods, because if that tripod is too lightweight, then it defeats its purpose. it moves just a little bit. Your hand pressing it could cause it to go off. And so that's where I recommend having some type of either a delay or a remote trigger. That could be a tethered trigger or it could be a wireless trigger, but that causes you not to be able to touch the camera during that exposure. We want to consider that, especially once the sun has gone down, at least to our eyes, where the light is totally out of the sky, for just a little bit longer. Just a few more minutes, 5, 10, 20 minutes sometimes. You have enough light to create some fantastic images, and you cannot see them with your own eyes, but you can create them because you've got these tools available to you. Your camera is just a light collection device, but it is not limited to the light collection abilities you have as a human. You may be thinking, what do you mean limitations? We can't miss what we don't know. The fact is, we have only one shutter speed. We are ridiculously limited when it comes to light. Our spectrum of light that we can see is just shy of ultraviolet, which we talked about before, and just shy of infrared. Anything that's beyond that visual spectrum is invisible to us. We can't see it. Does not mean it doesn't exist. And we also have a dynamic range. And our dynamic range is the amount of light that we can see from the brightest highlights to the darkest shadows and all the shades of gray in between. Anything that is beyond that on either side, we can't see it. If you look into a cave and it's a bright sunny day, you can't see the details in the cave. Yet if you go in there, if there is some light available, your eyes will adjust to it after a little while. That's because we have something that's actually really kind of cool. Our dynamic range may be the same width, but it has the ability to move across the scale, depending on the light environment that we're in. You've seen this before. When you're in your own bedroom and you turn off the lights, so say there's no other lights on, maybe something little like your clock, the clock from the TV or whatever. There's just a little bit of light in the room. At first, it's totally dark in there. Totally dark. Give yourself 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And what happens? That little tiny light that wasn't light enough to do anything now gives you enough light to see the room. It's because your dynamic range has the ability to move, but it stays the same width. Your camera has a different range. Most of your cameras only have about 5 stops worth of range, whereas you have about 14 stops worth of range. A stop is just a doubling or halving of an amount of light. So you have a pretty impressive amount of light range. The newest cameras have just the same amount, if not more, range than you have with your own eyes. Really cool. But that's where high dynamic range comes in as well. Because with high dynamic range, we can create multiple images. We can create the right image. And this I mentioned before of merging them later. This is the tool. It's called high dynamic range. Most people just say HDR, high dynamic range. So you create an image that's correct for the shadows. It's perfect for the shadow, the darker areas, but it blows out the highlights. It's horrible, but it's correct for the shadows. Something in the middle and something at the brighter areas where it's correctly exposed for those bright areas. What is that going to do to the shadow areas? Going to make them solid black, no detail at all. But when you merge those three together, you get a beautiful image. Now, depending on how contrasted the image and what it is that you want, you may do even more. Maybe you've got 5, maybe you do 7, but you can expand this range to get more on each side. Fun tool. And some people don't like it, but it's a cool tool. So that was just a little bit extra. And some additional tips. Manual focus. There are times when you're photographing, especially this particular time of day, your camera's autofocus system doesn't work very well. And you've seen this before where your lens goes and it just doesn't do anything. It's not focusing. It doesn't look right. What do we need to do in that point? We need to switch it from autofocus to manual focus. It's the only thing that's going to work at that point. And you probably want to try hyperfocal distance if your subject is far away and you want something in the foreground in focus too. but I'm not going into hyperfocal distance today, but you can look it up. Hyperfocal distance. All right. So again, if you have any difficulty in focusing, just switch to manual focus and you can take care of it. I want you to pay attention to your environment. The cool thing about sunsets is that they not only create wonderful colors in the sky in front of you, but they also provide a beautiful golden light that is just wonderful. Keep an eye out for other opportunities around you, not just in front of you. I mentioned this before, those long shadows that the sun creates from those trees. Oh, beautiful. So those are some thoughts and ideas in general. I said that I'd come back to lenses though. Any thoughts or questions?
Yeah, I could think of a few just like with talking with people and stuff I've tried to shoot myself. There's certain things at those hours that you really like to shoot, like neon signs. And so there's that compensation you sometimes have to make because the light source is closer to you and you're still wanting to capture the dramatic, background of the light going down. And there's times that I think you kind of want to use your flash, even though you're trying to catch natural light, where, for instance, like models or car shoots where you want the subject in the foreground to be lit well and still catch that dramatic background light coming in. How do you compensate when you have to when do you use a flash or filling light?
I love that. Yeah. So there's a lot of good reasons to do that. And the reason is because you're trying to get more light on that subject, whatever that subject is, whether it's a person or it's a sculpture, a building. You've got so much light in the background sometimes, then the things in the foreground aren't getting any light because you're seeing the back side of them, the shadow side of them. If this is the sun, this side is getting light, but if you're on this side of it, it's getting the shadow. So therefore, what can I do to get more light on that? That's where the question Melissa's is coming from. Melissa's question is coming from. There's two base ways. One, adding in artificial light. The other is a reflector. Now, there's times when there's another something over here, a building on this side that's reflecting enough light, and that's perfect. But what if it isn't? That's when we need either a reflector or artificial light. Now, the reflectors, I'd like to have a 5-in-1 reflector that has gold, silver, white, black, and translucent, meaning the light passes through, just softens the light. And in this instance, I'm probably going to use the white because the silver and the gold really aren't for this purpose. The gold will really heat them up too. If it's still bright and sunny, you're actually not only making them brighter, but the heat is ridiculous. And so just use the white. It's all you need. And you may have to get closer to your subject or further away, but play with that. Have your subject stand still if it's a person. If it's not a person, then maybe it is something that's still. But move it closer. Change the angle of your reflector to make it just the way that you want it to play with that. But I generally like to use a flash. But there's a problem with that. You may look like you've got two different types of lighting. Well, we don't want it to be obvious that we've got two different types of lighting. We just want enough light on that subject to be able to see it well with that amazing background. So therefore, if you use flash correctly, this isn't an issue. If you use flash incorrectly, then some of us blame the flash. It's not the tool's fault. It's the user's fault. It's kind of funny. I see on some people's websites or some people's comments on Facebook where they say something like, no, there's nothing wrong with being a natural light photographer. It's when they add in the reason why they don't use flash that makes me laugh. And they say, I'm a natural light photographer. I don't use flash because it looks unnatural. Okay. That would be like saying I'm a carpenter, but I don't use hammers because they can go through sheetrock walls. It's not the tool. It's me. It's the user. I have to use the tool correctly. So it means use less light. You're in control of the power. You're also in control of the color balance. So therefore, if the light coming from your flash is too blue compared to the golden light coming from the sun, then put an orange filter in front of your flash and you can match the light coming from the sun. It's pretty easy once you know how. But if you don't know how, if you haven't taken classes, if you haven't done that part, then you wouldn't even know. I want to use flash, but I want it to look like I didn't. Now, those who know how to use flash will know that I did it. Those who don't know that I use flash will look at that and say, I wonder how he did that. Because that's not what flash looks like. Because their experience with flash is that it's harsh. And that is how flash used incorrectly looks. Flash used incorrectly does look harsh. It does look funky. It does look unnatural. It's not that those natural light photographers who don't use flash are wrong. It's that they've opted out of learning for some strange reason, and they blame the tool for their lack of education. But you can't know what you don't know. If that is what you think, then that's what you believe. So I get it from their point of view and from mine.
I think you see those a lot, like in vacation photos, when people are in Hawaii with the sun setting, and with a point and shoot, at least they use the flash, knowing that they're backlit, and but you get that blue covered kind of look to the person and the
It
gold in
does
the
look
back,
blue.
and then and you see those, like I said, then you'll have like a professional cruise photographer, if you ever seen those, and they get you on the bow of the ship right where the sun is going, and they take beautiful, you look human, you don't look like you're a corpse, and you have the really pretty it looks just perfect, and again, like I said, you're saying like it's the experience of the photographer, and how well they use tools.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's a good one, because there's so many times when you do want someone in that photograph of that beautiful sunset, and the silhouette may be just what happens by accident, but you can still manipulate that silhouette, because the silhouette can look pretty darn amazing. I mean, if you are a portrait photographer and you enjoy couples, that's what you like to photograph, is couples. I picture this in your mind. The couple is walking along the beach hand in hand, just walking, you're following them, and the sunset is beautiful in the background. You've got it all set up just right, so the sun's in the right place, they're in the right place. You can choose to make them a silhouette against the sun. Looks amazing. And you can choose to add some light to them. Looks amazing. Now, here's something I do want you to consider if you are going to be adding in that artificial light. The placement of your light is another important variable, because you don't want the sand underneath their feet to be too bright. If the light is too low, you're going to have that light just kind of spread across the ground before it's going up. And I want to minimize that. I don't mind having a little bit of light close to their feet. I want that to be very minimal though. I want that light to be kind of focused on their faces, and go down to where there's nothing, almost nothing, by the time it reaches their feet. I still want to be able to see their hands if I'm trying to add a little bit of light in there. But you've got both options. We have both options. And a reflector at that point probably isn't the right tool, because they may be too far away for that to work for you, or the person who's holding your reflector. By the way, you need a person holding your reflector most of the time, maybe in the photograph. And I guess you could artwork it out using Photoshop or some other image manipulation program. So you could do it even still. It just requires a little bit of extra work.
You just made me think of a lot of photographers that have been utilizing those hours at high touristy places to actually sell portrait packages. I love to watch. I follow a lot of photographers and artists on Instagram, and there's some photographer. I mean, they do this so well. They're like, they go up, they show people their Instagram, or they have a friend that's showing their Instagram photos of these gorgeous couple pictures and stuff like that. They take them on there, and like, yeah, you can be on the Instagram, but if you'd like to get on my website, you can buy the portraits if you want to. And I think they just utilize those hours and those high traffic places so well. Are there places that you recommend that you've been to that are perfect for maybe a photographer to utilize that way to make some money?
I've never considered doing that, but you do see those every once in a while. When I first started my career in photography, I've been full-time photographer since 1991, but I didn't start off working for myself. I worked as the photography manager for SeaWorld. And I had 20 or 30 employees that I was responsible for right out of college. Don't know if that's the right job for someone right out of college, but that's what I did. And we had them set up at specific spots where the photo where there'd be a cool background, like the entry to SeaWorld or one of the water rides. We'd have them set up in those perfect spots. But of course, average Joe couldn't do that. That was a contract thing. So that wouldn't work. But I definitely know what you're talking about, because that was done and it made a lot of money. Made a whole
Exactly.
lot of money.
I did the same thing at La Cantera / Six Flags Fiesta, Texas. And we did the same thing, hi, welcome to Fiesta, Texas. I need you to stop right there and look at the camera and act like you know each other. Take a quick picture. Hi, you can get the ticket later on your way out. I mean, I had that spiel down, and I think I could say it in 3 languages.
That is funny.
But, doing that, I ended up seeing people when we would go to, like I said, being San Antonio, we are a tourist town. Being at Mitieras and places like that, they would have the photographer that would come to the table and stuff like that. And like I said, I'm original hustler kind of thing, and I used to do that same thing. I used to be at Providence High School downtown, get my camera, go down to the river walk, and just ask will y'all mind if I take pictures of customers there? And I tell them, hey, if y'all are interested in getting your pictures, thank you for being part of my student portfolio. If you'd like to get things and see what the pictures look like, I'll email you a little thing. And if you want to order some, I'd be glad to print them up for you. And at that time, I think I started working at 1 Hour Pro Photo then, which is where I met you. And yeah, I mean, those were our side hustles. We're finding and knowing my city, those good little location things, and it was a good side hustle as a photographer.
Nice. Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of lots of different opportunities for that kind of thing, especially in a tourist town like San Antonio or some place along the beach.
Mm-hmm.
So I would assume that there are opportunities for those who would like to do that kind of thing.
I mean, you've mentioned in some of your other some of the other photo tips monthly about going on vacation and doing that. I think if you can work out with the hotel that you're staying at, if they're a beachfront property and they have a really nice thing, you might even find a way to where you can angle the signage on there. So as you're taking the nice photo, but then it has Radisson and behind it. And sometimes it's nice because you can get paid from the people you're selling the portraits to, and then maybe even something from the hotel for doing a nice little product placement in that photo also.
I definitely think it's a good idea for to at least explore the potential of making money while you're on vacation, to help offset the costs or totally cover the costs, which is what we've done.
You're just looking at that 1 hour, either the morning or the evening, to really work it and stuff. How many people how many shots do you think realistically you could set up in that hour of light?
During the magic hour, quite a few, because it's the right at first of the beginning part of that hour, let's say it's sunset, there's not a whole lot that's changing other than these long shadows, but the colors are just beginning to change, and the sky, you'll notice, looking one direction is very, very bright, almost white. The other direction is just a beautiful blue, and so if you want those beautiful blues, that's the photo, pointing in the direction away from the sun at that time of day is the way to do that. And so how many could you do? Oh man, you could do quite a few. If you tried to line it up where it was one right after the other, you could really make it happen.
That's good to know. Like I said, I really like the idea of utilizing that time of day again, because honestly, I just think they're an easy sell. When you have them lit well and you have the background lit well, like I said, I used to do it a lot as a kid, because like I said, if especially down the river walk, if you know how the light hits and how it bounced off the buildings, to hit
Mhm.
certain umbrella restaurants, you could get really good pictures. And when they would see them, they were like, I loved our trip down there. I'd like to get this. I'd like to send it as postcards. Can you print them as postcard? Like I can, Photoshop had, I was like 95, 96. So, you could at least put the, wish you were here San Antonio letters on their pictures and send them. It was, like I said, great little stream of income.
That's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty darn cool.
Yeah. So, what, like I said, at any other places though that you've been to that you can recommend that are just great during the, like, that you have personally liked shooting during those times?
Man, I think every place is perfect to create images in. That image you saw at the beginning, where the and let me bring that back up so you can. So instead of describing it, I'm showing you. Hey, that's interesting. It came out correct this time. I don't know what changed. But this image is from the back of a boat. So we're just pulling one of those inner tubes that can hold two people in it behind us. And when you look at this scene, I didn't look at it as looking golden like this.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what it looked like when I photographed it. But after I saw it, I looked back out at it, and it did kind of look golden. I seriously, when I was looking at it, didn't notice that. When I was in the environment, didn't notice. When I created the image and looked at it, that's when I realized how golden that water looks. Because the rest of the day, it looks blue.
Mm-hmm.
Well, kind of like it's supposed to. But during this time of the day, and you can see that there's two people there. That's grandpa and grandson in that photograph. So my stepfather and one of my boys in this image, and that's at Medina Lake, which is just west of San Antonio. And we're just having a good time. That was created 9 years ago.
I know a lot of people think of more natural settings and landscapes, but architecture is also another great one to shoot during that time as well. Just, even San Antonio with some of the older buildings here, but if you get a chance to go to DC, or if you even get a chance to go to Machu Picchu or Greece, that those time of days too, along the architecture of those cities, you are able to get the nice dramatic lines and see them. All the facade work, just gets that nice shadow on it and just highlights certain parts of it. And I like, again, that time of day just for architecture. I love cityscapes, and I think they shoot beautifully in them as well.
You're so right. Photographing the buildings, even if let's say you're a real estate photographer, you want to photograph several times during the day, but a lot of real estate photographers are in and out as short a time as possible, just because the amount the realtors are able to pay isn't very much. But ideally, I think all real estate photographers would go back multiple times a day to get the different views of how the building, how the home looks in different lighting. For instance, and I haven't photographed real estate in quite some time, but one of the things I really enjoyed doing was photographing a home as the sun was going down at sunset. But then after the sun had already gone down was my most favorite time, because the sky just goes this amazing blue. It's just beautiful blue. And there's just enough light on the home so you can see everything just clear, just perfectly clear. But the lights are on in the home. And so you can see that. And one extra step that I like to do was take the water hose and water down all the driveway and the sidewalks, so that the light that was inside the home reflected off of those surfaces. And so I had both those warm lights from the home, the beautiful blue sky, and just enough detail on the home to make this look really warm and inviting. So yes, I would use this magic hour as a tool to help sell the home. And I've never been a real estate agent, so I'm helping the real estate agent sell the home with the photographs. But yeah, oh man, you've just had this beautiful, beautiful light.
And those are great tips. Like I said, I always love every month that you're doing these, because it just, the things that you make me think of while you're doing these lessons is, you totally get my head going on thoughts there. And I'm like, I really should go back and start doing that. It was a really fun side stream of income, and photography does. And I mean, I like, there's certain things that you like, you photo, it's like art, that you photograph some things because you enjoy the way they look to you, and there's a, I think some people become even, I have some photos that I'm like, okay, I'm a fan of that photo. I took it, I love it. It's actually really good. I think that's sometimes hard for artists because it never feels quite complete. I think with photography, you kind of get that this is a good shot. You have a completeness, I think, with photography that with art, you kind of want to keep going and change it a little bit. Photography, I think, offers that. And there's like I said, I can be proud of some shots I have, and some I have like from high school doing negatives and stuff like that, and I still like that. And it's like, wow, I got to get back into doing that. I would like to see what I could do with digital, and of course now raw files, and getting to play with raw files and stuff like that. And I see like a lot of tips, even with photo cameras, that people are trying to do to capture that natural light, and going into whatever photo editor you have on your phone and increasing the brightness all the way up, and then playing with the saturation, the hue, the clarity, and the contrast, and then you bring the brightness back down, and you got almost a different image as far as the colors and stuff that pop out for you there. But those times of days are so great. Um, Jim, did you have anything else you want to cover with Jay? We got about.
Well, I could show you in in a workshop. We just walked outside the office and we photographed whatever the scene was out there. Now, the office is on a highway, or was. We're not in that office anymore. And so it's not a pretty scene, but you can at least get an idea of bracketing, so you can see different light and how it changes. And so let me share that screen with you real quick, so you know what I'm talking about. So first of all, there it is. Did I mention it's not pretty? But you can see that the sun is going down in this image. And so you can see that this is just changing the exposure.
Oh, wow.
So the time in between these two is very little, very
Yeah.
little. You can see the sun hasn't moved much at all, but the exposure is different between the two. And so this first one is the one that the camera chose.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is the one that I chose because I wanted less light. And you can see how I'm changing that, getting less light,
Mm-hmm.
and then even less light, and see how much of a change there is between these. And move on to the next one. So starting off with that, and in just moments, I'm choosing something like that. And to me, getting rid of that ugly foreground helps this image. Yeah. Now, not that I'm a fan of these electric lines or phone lines or whatever they are. I'm not at all. And if we were somewhere else, this wouldn't be the image that I created. But the goal here is to just share and show that's the change that occurs. And that's based on the light that I allow into the camera. Mm-hmm. There is a bit of difference here. You can see the sun has just barely gone behind the horizon. So there is a difference there. But the majority of what I'm showing you is the light that I chose.
Yeah, and with bringing out those colors, you can do more, I think, in editing, so that you could, if you wanted to, take out those phone lines and make it look a little more dramatic, or a little more dramatic, more clean.
Yeah. And I did like these birds sitting here with the moon, mm-hmm. the background. And you can see I need to clean my image sensor, but ignore that for this purpose. You can see the bird there flying off, and that is that. I just had a long telephoto. Oh well, no, there's a closer one that they were on. That's not the same telephone line. Oh, that's one of the other students in the class, and there's another one over here on this side. See how the light's changing? This
Mhm.
blue all the way down to the red. Now, that's not what I'm seeing with my own eyes. I don't
Yeah.
see this. I'm creating this by choice. And you are going to notice after, well, I guess that's after totally dark. No, it's not totally dark. That was the gas station next door. And I am choosing a longer shutter speed in order to get more light. So this darker image was taken before this image.
Are you
And it's
keeping
at
the
night.
ISO at 100 on these, right?
Yeah, the ISO I think is at 100 on these, although I don't know. It should be. By the way, it won't surprise me if it looks not so good on screens
Yeah.
because it's going through Zoom, and Zoom does reduce quality.
Yeah.
And that's just the business that was right next to me. And I went back to the bird up there because I thought he was cool. I like him.
The strutting model.
That's right. Okay, that's a different class. But you get the idea.
Yeah. It's definitely something to experience with, like you're saying, to bracket just so you can find those different colors. And the great thing about digital is you get to see it immediately.
Oh, yes.
And I mean, those screens are pretty accurate as far as what you see on there. Small, but accurate.
To some degree.
Yep.
There's a couple of things that they're not so good at. For instance,
Yeah.
focus.
Yeah.
Unless you zoom in, you can't
Yeah.
rely on focus on those things.
Yeah.
And that's something for the most part, we don't even realize until we've got it back on our computer and we're looking at it on our regular screen. Then we see that it's out of focus, and we would have created it again if we had known that it was out of focus.
Yeah. Yeah. Focus is always going to be an issue. No, this has been amazing. There's a lot coming up with Photo SA too. I know y'all have the youth competition coming up July 18th. Did you want to talk a little bit about that? What you got coming up?
So on July 18th, as Melissa just mentioned, that's the kids tournament. So from ages 5 to 15, and they're broken up into 3 age group categories. So the 6-year-olds aren't competing with the 14-year-olds, but they're broken up. And this is just a summer fun event on a Sunday morning. It's done virtually, so that means you can be anywhere as long as you have internet access and a camera, digital camera, of course. And you from 8 to before noon, you get to go out and photograph. And the rules are the same as the regular version that we do in October for those 12 and up. So we give them the list at the beginning of the competition. They photograph whatever whatever categories they want to. They can compete in all or they compete in one. It doesn't really matter. And then they upload them before noon, because the judges start at noon. So anything that comes in after noon, the judges just won't see. So it's got to be uploaded before noon. The judges do their thing, and within 2 hours, they're usually done. And we start announcing the winners. So it's all in one day. It's not a popularity contest where you put it on your Facebook page and collect likes. No, this is all done at one time, and there's going to be prizes from Finer Works and a couple of other places. But Finer Works is one of the major sponsors of both the kids tournament and the regular tournament. The regular tournament is in October. So, and it's the 3rd annual tournament for the kids, and the 9th annual tournament for the regular tournament. And I can't say adult because it starts at 12.
Yeah.
So that's for the tournaments. And as far as Photo SA, we have a pretty darn cool speaker coming up, and that's only a week away. His name is Richard Sturdivant, and he is the Photoshop guru. I mean, he's the guy. It's pretty odd that we're able to get him. It's pretty darn cool we're able to get him. I've crossed paths with him a handful of times, not that many, and so I didn't know whether he'd remember who I was when I reached out to him and asked if he would speak. Luckily, he remembered, but I didn't know if he would or not. Because the times we've crossed paths is either I was attending something and he was teaching, or I was one of the other teachers. And so we didn't really have an opportunity to visit. So just in passing, did we have that opportunity? But he's going to be, bringing the things that he does with Photoshop. And you may think, well, man, that must be the advanced stuff. That's way above. What he does is he creates the software programs, are called plugins, that go along with Photoshop, so that you don't have to know the advanced stuff in order to get it done. You just apply the plugin. Pretty darn cool. Now there's some stuff you still have to know, but man, he does make it a lot easier, and he'll share that on 6:30 Thursday of next week. That's the second Thursday at 6:30. And go to meetup.com, MEETUP, meetup.com/photo essay, PHOTOSA, for more information.
And that's July 8th.
July 8th. You got it.
So yeah, so that's interesting. I mean, and what about on the photography school wise? Anything starting up there that people should go check out as far as getting into the classes?
We're finishing up E3 right now, which is a great business program. And we'll be beginning what's called essential marketing not long after that, this month. It'll be later this month, but this month. And that is a marketing program for photographers. And it's kind of the homegrown stuff. The majority of it is stuff that you can do on your own. It doesn't really cost you a whole lot of money. It can, based on how you choose to do it, but it's geared to be able to employ yourself even on a low budget or no budget, really. You do need time. You do have to invest your time in order to make it work. But it's one of those things where if it costs more of your time, if you use more of your time, maybe it costs a little bit less money. But if you're using someone else's time, it costs more of your money. So these are a lot of things that you can do on your own. But it's 9 different marketing tools that I actually guarantee that if you employ them, you will make money with them. They work for me, so I can't imagine them not working for anybody else. And I'm kind of a slow learner. I may not seem that way now, but I've been doing this for 30 years. This year makes 30 years, 1991 to 2021, 30 years in as a full-time photographer. And a few years before that, doing it here and there every once in a while, like everybody starts out.
Yeah.
But
Wow.
so that's what's coming up. And there's a handful of other things that are coming up as well. But yeah, go to landersphotoschool.com and click on get email updates up in the top right, and you'll know what's coming.
Yeah, great.
In August,
Mhm.
we're going to be going to Colorado for a workshop in a beautiful place in southern Colorado. We'll be in Durango and Pagosa Springs, that area. The hotel's in Durango, but we'll be moving around while we're there. And so that's coming up, and that's to get more information on that, go to pagosaphotoworkshops.com. pagosaphotoworkshops.com.
Yeah, you have a lot of stuff coming up too. I think I even thought of one more question for you to end. I think so. If you have to pick a print media for your shots, for those golden hour shots, I want to say let's go with the golden ones first. What kind of media do you like to see them on? Something a little more reflective, like gloss, like metal?
Yeah, it could be. It's the image. Okay, you're not going to like my answer. The image tells me what medium is supposed to be on. So if it's that sunset, very well could be a metal.
Mm-hmm.
It could be just magnificent on a metal, just amazing on a metal. But it could be amazing on a canvas too. I like canvas for people a lot. If I'm doing a family portrait, so if I'm doing a family portrait and the sunset's in the background, I'm probably leaning more towards the canvas.
And what about in your blue hours? Is there anything that you, like you're saying with the people, you like to go canvas? Is there anything in blue that you like to shoot different, that you'd like to print different?
Oh, maybe the cotton fiber papers would look really good with that blue.
That is true.
That's probably what I would try is one of the cotton fiber.
Yeah. Well,
Maybe the art rag or the is it Horshan?
mm-hmm.
That's probably the one I would choose for the blue.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Horshan.
With a deckled edge on it. I've already got the whole frame going on in my head with that.
But I can picture that with the gold. Once it turns to the gold before it goes to the blue, I can also see it there too. And so both the golden and the blue. But there's that brilliant time where there's just all the colors are there. And I'm thinking that's probably more on the metal side.
Yeah. And like I said, well, we have that on the papers. If anybody wants to test out their magic hour photos and see how well they do on print, we do have that 30% off sale that's going on through July 4th at midnight Central Time. So take some pictures today and tomorrow and kind of over the weekend, and then go ahead and submit your pictures up and get some prints done. So just go to fineartworks.com. We have the details there for the 30% discount on our fine art papers. Another thing coming up with Finer Works is that no Monday. We will be closed July 5th, just to kind of give our employees that time, much needed time off for all the hard work that they're doing, and they can enjoy the 4th and, kind of rally with the fireworks in the evening and not have to worry about being there quite so early to start all the printing machines and everything. So just note that will not be a business day when you're looking at your orders. And don't forget that on July 6th, first Tuesday, we have tips for selling your prints at booths. And we actually got an artist and a photographer to kind of give their different perspectives of how to sell it. With artists, sometimes it is how do you sell the value of your prints sometimes on there, and your photo papers and stuff like that. So we're going to look at things like that people can do, especially now that everybody's getting back together with these in-person events again. We're getting the art fairs are coming back, the places to sell. But I bought some great photos framed up from a vendor just because I missed Austin and I got a whole bunch of framed stuff. But those are coming back. And we're going to have that at 6:30 p.m. Central, Tuesday, July 6th. And same thing, you just go onto your Finer Works login if you want to join us on Zoom or join us on YouTube. And you can watch there or watch the playback. And, if you'll go ahead and give us subscribe and like for these videos, that helps us a lot too. And share them on your social. Yeah, we appreciate it. And James, did you have anything else to close up with?
No, I don't. I think you nailed it. I was gonna. Yeah, I didn't have anything else.
Oh.
She did awesome, didn't she?
Absolutely.
Take the words right out of your mouth, huh? Great. And Jim, as always, we're so thankful and appreciative of the time you take to do this for us every month. It's great. I'm glad we can kind of keep them there for future use on our YouTube, and we appreciate that. So, but we're looking forward to all of the tournaments that will be coming up. And again, just go to meet up at Photo SA, guys, and check those out. Okay.
Thank you. That's awesome.
I will let you go ahead and end the meeting, seeing how you have control.
Okay. Well, thank you guys from Lander Photography School and for Finer Works. Thank you for being here for this episode of the Photo Tips Monthly. And please put it on the calendar so that you have the so that it's coming up. It's again the first Thursday of every single month at 4 o'clock. Thank you for taking your time. I know you have other things that you have to do in your life. Thank you for being here with us at Photo Tips Monthly.
Great.
Bye-bye for now.
We have somebody on YouTube. Laurie wants to go ahead and say she missed it, but she will watch the replay.
Okay, good.
And she just ordered her photos on Vidibond. So, Laurie, thank you. And let us tag us on Instagram or something. And when you get your order in, and we'd love to show those on Unbox what you got. Okay. Well, y'all have a great day, James. Jim, I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a great night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.